All right, we're live. Welcome to the after show. This is the show after the show. We got very creative and we thought we'd go through this planning process. What do we name this thing? Well, it's the after show because it directly after the show we just did on the air. And really what we started is people started asking us, hey, we wish you would go a little bit longer. And in fact, now we are streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. So you can find us nearly everywhere. And also, again, if you want to watch or listen to this, you can stream it on the iHeartRadio app. Just search for West Michigan Live, and the after show will be up on there. So today we wanted to have a conversation with somebody I thought you might find interesting. He is a Michigan author. He's written a book that's kind of unique, and well, during an election year, 2020, things can be kind of crazy. How do you explain this kind of stuff to your kids, especially see things get a little heated if you watch the news, the skies and that kind of thing. And I think it's important to talk to your kids about this stuff. Ben LaCross joins us right now. Ben, we appreciate you being here with us today. How are you?
I'm great, Justin. Thanks for having me.
He's a Michigan author. The name of the book, by the way, and we'll put this, if you want to check it out, in the comments if you're streaming it on Facebook or on YouTube or Twitter. The name of the book is called Tucker for President. Middle school conservative values and the craziest class election ever. So, where do we start with? Is this, I'm looking at the copy here, and it looks like it's a kid's book. I mean, what age group would this be for?
Yeah, so I intended this book to be targeted towards the 8 to 14-year-old age range. It's really intended to kind of be a fun book, like a Diary of a Wimpy Kid style book or something like that, that would really engage kids at their level with things that are interesting to them, right? School issues, YouTube controversies, and other things. But also weave in there some discussion about some really mature things that kids hear us talking about a lot. Politics, elections, our Constitution, founding fathers, and things like that. That's the intent of the book.
Yeah, so this kid who is featured in the book, Tucker, to walk us through who he is and a little bit about him.
Yeah, well, Tucker Kirkman is a new kid in a new school. And Tucker gets he gets kind of picked on. He's given a hard time by a boy in his class when he first goes to school there. And come to find out that boy is the class president. And this kid has always promised the whole sixth grade class all sorts of free things, but he never delivers on anything. So Tucker's new friends in his new school, which is Ben Franklin Middle School, home of the fighting founding fathers, they encourage Tucker to run for class president. In the real world, the presidential election is going on at the same time as Tucker is going through his class election process. And so Tucker, as he's going through his election, he learns really similar things that are happening in the presidential election and really strong values along the way.
All right. So what are those values? And I know if you're a parent, you're trying to explain to like what politics is all about and maybe why it's important to vote and maybe your values and maybe you're looking for, because there's not a lot of conservative stuff out there you think about for kids. There's all kinds of young books for young adults and things like that. My dad was an English teacher and reading growing up, and so he would drag me, Ben, to the library or a lot of times to bookstores so he could look for these books for, to share with kids in the class, give them away and things like that. And we'd spend hours there. I would just dread it every time. We went, Dad, not again. But now as I grow up, I love reading and I love being there. So I know that it's important to try and find some things that your kids can enjoy and maybe they have the same values that you do.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where the impetus for writing this book came from. I'm a farmer in northern Michigan by trade, and I write a lot for agricultural publications and some other things. But back in 2018, we had a governor's election in the state of Michigan, and my son, who was 11 at the time, asked me questions like, what does the governor do? How do elections work? What is the difference between the state legislature and Congress? And I thought there's got to be a fun, engaging book like this that can help kids answer those questions at their level. And so I searched high and low for a book like that. We read a lot in our family, just like it sounds like you did as you were growing up, and you still do, Justin. That's great. So I searched high and low for a book like this, but a book that would also kind of instill my worldview, the values that I want to share with my son. And there's an ocean of liberal publications, liberal books that talk about things like this, but there's really nothing for this middle school age range in the conservative space. And so I had this concept for a book. And so 2 years ago in October and November, I sat down at 4 o'clock in the morning and wrote the book for 2 hours every day before work. And it's really become awesome. So back to your question about what are some of the values that Tucker learns. So Tucker learns some of the values of the founding fathers, their belief in limited government. Of course, he goes to Ben Franklin Middle School, so that's weaved into the narrative kind of neatly. It touches on some very complicated subjects: taxation, personal responsibility, respect for the flag and for our military, which I think is really important. In fact, a portion of the proceeds of this book go towards Veterans Affairs issues. I feel very strongly in that. And there's a pro-life chapter that discusses why I feel it's very important to be a pro-life family. So those are some heavy issues, but it's really weaved into a funny narrative. Like I said, there's a YouTube controversy. It talks a little bit about money in politics, because Tucker's opponent comes from a very wealthy family, and he's able to try to buy the election away from Tucker. But at the end of the day, it's about teamwork. It's about leadership. It's about personal responsibility. And it's about a foundation of a saying that Tucker's family tells both Tucker and his siblings before they go off to school every morning. And that quote is, "Be a learner, a listener, and a leader." And that's something that I think is really important for kids as they go off to school. It's something that I tell my kids before I go off to school, probably because I was more of a distraction when I was in school than a learner, listener, and a leader. But those are some of the values that I want to share with my kids. And other people really around the country have really taken a liking to the message of Tucker, and they're really able to use the book as a conversation point right now through the election season to have with their kids.
Hey, Ben, I don't know. I haven't talked about, I don't want to mean to put you on the spot, but can we give a book or two away? Would that be cool?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So let's do, let's just click share on this, and we will randomly pick someone who comments, likes, and shares. No matter where you're watching this, we'll pick randomly somebody throughout, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. And we'll send you a book, especially if you've got a child or maybe a grandchild and you want to do this. So I just found out, Ben, that I am going to be a dad. Matter of fact, I found out in the wildest way possible. I found out on Father's Day. My wife told me, she shared the news with me. Yeah, it was incredible.
Dude, that's awesome. Congratulations.
So she's like 16 weeks along now, and it's starting to get real. We're starting to collect things around the house, and things are really kind of progressing. But one of the things that's really come to forefront is, well, I've heard stories about how it's important to read to your kids, and like even when they're in the womb. I've heard stories about how they'll start to recognize your voice, and you start to read different books to them and things like that. Maybe it'll help them get to bed easily and things like that. So when they do get older, so we started reading, like we're just reading these kids books. So thinking about like what are they gonna, what are you going to give them as far as reading? The other things that is we start to learn more about some of the entertainment and things that are out there for the kids. Like, what are they going to watch? What are you going to have? How do you have some of these really tough conversations with them? And so as a dad, any advice on that front? Because, I can't, some of these things that we're facing now, I mean, I can't even imagine having to think about them or even talk about them with your kids, but it's something that has to happen.
Yeah, well, Justin, if you're already thinking about these things with your first child, your fatherly instincts are strong, man. So you're going to do just fine. The advice that I give you is kind of the advice that I wanted to impart throughout this book is that it's okay to have intentional conversations with your kids, whether you want to talk to them about politics or religion or some of the other kind of heavy subjects that we have, especially as kids get into middle school. So my kids, I have three children. My oldest is 13. My middle daughter is Lauren, and she's 10, and my youngest son is almost 8. So we're right in the middle of sports and choir practice and all those kind of things. But the one thing that my wife and I always try to do is really have deep conversations with them about why we want to raise them and why we want to be the people who we want to be. For example, when the quarantine hit back in March, and we were trying to explain all these really confusing things to our kids. Yeah. Why are schools being shut down and whatnot? Right. The one thing that I remember we did discuss was how we wanted to support our local businesses a lot more significantly maybe than we had in the recent past by buying takeout food from restaurants and other things, because we felt that was part of the community that we wanted to belong in. We wanted to support local businesses in our community. And so that led us into having a conversation about, people losing their jobs and how we have to support one another and what it means to have businesses shut down. So, fatherly advice, you're going to do great. Keep reading to your kids, and don't be afraid to have conversations with them as they get older about things like this. I think it really helps us really have a really close connection to our family, to our kids.
Yeah. Ben LaCross is with us. He's a Michigan author who's written this book. We put the link, by the way, in the comments if you want to check it out, but it's called Tucker for President. And, Ben, I'm looking at some of the things that we can talk about or learn where the kids can learn, because when they go off to school, I think it's more and more, it's starting to become more and more apparent. And, even my dad was a teacher, even though I recognize this, but if you don't teach them about these things, someone else will. And if you don't have conversations like taxes, I know it's a tough conversation to have, and maybe there's a right time to have it, but I heard someone say something I thought that was really interesting and kind of cute. Eat 30% of your kids' ice cream. And that's a great way to teach them about taxes, and I thought, wow, because if you don't, somebody else will in a way that you may regret.
Yep, absolutely. On Halloween, when we take our kids around trick-or-treating, we have what's called the dad tax. And so they have to bring their candy in, and I get to pick out the stuff that I like. And that's just kind of a funny way to introduce taxation to them, but it is. And there's kind of a similar story, or that's the narrative around taxation in the Tucker book. It's a funny little discussion, but it revolves around, there are things that we need the government for, really, really essential services. But then there are other things where it's like, okay, you're taking how much out of my paycheck and I'm getting what back for it? Yeah. Wait, what does this mean? Right? So, and you're right. If we're not talking to our kids about these issues, someone else is. And I think teachers do a wonderful job. My wife is a public school teacher. We know that there's wonderful teachers out there, but we also know that there is also another side of a lot of these conversations that the teachers are having with our children. And if we're not intentionally talking to them, if we're not giving them resources that meet them at their level, like this Tucker book, that engage them in some of these issues that are really important for the future of our country, then someone else is going to be talking about them. And it might not be the conversation or the values that we share. So that's what I'm trying to get back by doing this book.
Tom mentions here, teaching candid, respectful dialogue is critical. Let me ask you about that, because I think, in an election year, things are so polarized. They're so politically charged. Everything is. You can't escape. There's nothing out there that I can't think about, Ben, as we talk with Ben LaCross, the author here in Michigan of the Tucker book, and it's called Tucker for President, Middle School Conservative Values in the Craziest Class Election Ever. But everything's so politically charged. How do you get into that conversation of, well, we want to be respectful, but we also don't want to be afraid to confront and talk about what we believe in?
Absolutely. Whether it's in a class election or a local school board or a run for Congress or the president, we need good people to step up and offer their service to our country and our communities through government. That's what our nation was built upon. And Tucker does that in this book. He steps up to run for class president. But one of the things that Tucker did, and he kind of taught me some lessons throughout this, is how to hold yourself to a high moral standard throughout an election, and also how to be good to your opponent throughout an election. And really, when I see some of the vitriol around the presidential election right now, and it seems like with every election that's going on, it makes me wonder if people really give thought to what our founding fathers wanted our nation to be. I really feel like we have an incredible balance with the way our state, local, and national governmental elections are built. If you don't like the elected official who's representing you in Congress or in the state legislature, they're going to be up for election every 2 years. You can either step up to run for election, or you can campaign for a candidate who you feel aligns with your values even more. If you don't like the president, there's going to be another presidential election right now and then in 4 years, and you can get involved. And I respect people's their freedom to protest and to voice their opinions, but I'm really concerned with the way the protests have turned in the last couple months in our country. In small town America, where I come from, we have a lot of potlucks, especially maybe not so right now when we're supposed to socially distance, but we have potlucks where people get together, and whether they're church potlucks or family reunions, and they bring a dish to pass and they all sit down, and the conversation inevitably turns into politics or the local news, the current events of what's happening in the day. And really, most of the time in our communities, we don't always agree with the people that we're sitting across from at the potluck table. But we can look them in the eye. We can shake their hands. We know that they're good people and that they mean well. And maybe they'll learn something from us, and maybe we'll learn something from them. But at the end of the day, we'll stand up, look each other in the eye, and shake hands. I really feel like America needs to get back to having more potlucks and less protests. Come together, find some common ground, move forward. And if we don't like the outcome of this election, we're all on the same team. We're all Americans. Let's move forward together. And then 4 years from now, we can have another presidential election. This is the greatest country in the world.
Yeah, Ben, you're right. I've had the sense for a long time that we have a lot more in common with each other than we do our differences, but we're constantly being told how different and how divided we are. I think in a lot of part because that's more exciting. The idea that if it bleeds, it leads on the news is why we get so much negative news. And there's this idea that we never hear about the planes that landed safely. But I don't just mean those stories. I don't think those are exciting. But here's what I think, and this is why I started this good newsletter that I'll send out. Matter of fact, I'll send out this little interview, and maybe I'll send out the link to your book too, because I believe there are more good things that are exciting. The stories that we're not hearing about, but there are good things that are going on out there that you might look at and say, well, that's a miracle. Or look at that story. Isn't that amazing? What these people did, just everyday kind of average people, and something that they were able to accomplish. The other day, they celebrated this man, the oldest living World War II veteran, celebrated his 111th birthday. Pretty cool. Just little things like that. Why don't we hear more about those things? Because I do think they're exciting. There is an idea that some of these things won't drive ratings, or there won't be clicks. There are things like that to websites. But I do think we need to hear more about them. And you're right. I think we need more potlucks. As you know, a guy like myself, I could definitely get behind a good potluck, and a few less protests. More with Ben LaCross in just a moment here. I just want to send you a reminder about the Good Feet store. It was about a year and a half ago that I walked into the Good Feet store. Now that I'm down about 96 pounds, it was incredible. That journey has been a wild ride. I just started walking. A little here and a little there. At first, I was in pain to even walk to my mailbox. It just was tough to do hardly anything. Now I'm working out, doing boot camp style workouts. I get like 10,000 steps in every day. And like I said, it all started with walking into the Good Feet store. They were able to help me, and I think they can help you. That's why actually I reached out to them, and I wanted to tell this story because I believe that you or someone you love may be listening and can get help too. You don't have to just live with foot pain, right? You can visit the Good Feet store like I did and see if they can help you as much as they've helped me. Walk in and see for yourself at 28th Street there at Target, or you can learn more at goodfeet.com or call 616-200-6079 for more info. The Good Feet store. Ben LaCross is with us, and he's the author of this book. Again, we're going to give away. So if you click share and you click like and leave a comment, could be any comment, in the section there, of course, we'll pick somebody randomly from either Facebook, Twitter, YouTube to grab this book, whether it's for you, for your kids, or maybe grandkids, and you want to share this with them. It's Tucker for President, middle school, conservative values, and the craziest class election ever. Because, the other thing is, Ben, I know you know this, but we're already starting to see the ads on TV. We're hearing them on the radio over and over again. Your kids will be asking more and more questions. They're probably learning about it in school. You might want to teach them a little bit about what's happening with the election. As I'm sure this is a time that all parents are sort of trying to figure out, how can I get creative about how I talk to my kids about certain things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the time to have these conversations with our kids, because they're hearing about them at school. They're hearing about them on the news, just as they travel around with us. Even kids in upper elementary and middle school, they're talking about this, and then they're trying to figure it out. I mean, I think there's inherent desire for people to know where they come from, and part of our heritage is our democracy in the United States, and the democracy is another concept that is touched on a little bit in the Tucker for President book. What the founding fathers desired out of our representative republic. What they felt a democracy would be, and why they wanted to shy away from socialism. So there's a lot of interesting topics. I mean, and really when you think about it, talking about current events and talking about really hard issues like this, there's a lot more concepts that can be explored through the lens of a book like this, because at the end of the day, to really have these messages be sticky with kids, they have to be engaging, right? They have to make them laugh, and they have to make them want to turn the page. And so that's what I intended to do.
Ben LaCross is here with us. We just talked to Ted Nugent earlier today, and he's talking about apathy and how, that when we kind of stand by and don't engage and don't do anything, that's how things can kind of get away from us. And I think a lot of people are realizing that they need to re-engage, especially in a positive way. Sort of teaches and maybe talks about how you can do that from an early start here. Ben, I know you're going to be engaged. Actually, this week, you'll be this weekend in West Michigan with a group of folks. What are you getting together to do?
Yeah, so there's a group of us getting together. It's called the West Michigan Trump Campaign Caravan. It's this Saturday at the Deltaplex in Grand Rapids. It begins at about 9:30, and there's a group of people who are just getting together in their cars in the parking lot. There's going to be a little short program, and then that's why, then that group is going to be traveling throughout Grand Rapids up to 14th Street, up to St. Julian's Winery, to show their support for the president, for our democratic system, and for the election process. Because, at the end of the day, I think we all want a fair, honest election. That's the foundation of our country. But the foundation of our country is also to get together and show support for the candidates that you believe in. And I know Tucker would be a big fan of small limited government, of personal freedoms, returning the freedoms back to the citizens of the state of Michigan. I'm concerned about the amount of power that our governor has had throughout this whole pandemic situation. I was a supporter early on of flattening the curve and shutting things down for a certain amount of time.
6 months into flattening the curve, by the way. We're now 6 months into just 15 days to flatten the curve.
Exactly. And we're pushing close to 200 executive orders on that. Our freedoms are being taken away. Some of the freedoms that we talk about in the Tucker for President book, and some of the freedoms that we didn't even, think about having before this are being infringed upon. And so we want to work together with the Democrats. We want to work together as Michiganders, but we want to do so through our representative republic, our form of government, through our legislature and our senators.
Yeah, nobody's saying that we don't need to take steps to make sure that we are safely and reasonably and smartly doing these things to open up and to be safe. But there needs to be people working together. That's what this country was all about. And I agree. I think that what we've seen is quite concerning here in Michigan, as we see a lot of executive. You just mentioned almost 200 executive orders. Tucker probably would not be a fan of that. Find more, by the way, about Tucker, and in that book, if you want to read. Again, Tucker for President. We'll put the link up if you haven't already checked it. It's in the comments now. Tucker for President. And you can get it on Amazon, probably local bookshops as well, Ben. And I know you have a website too.
Yeah, Tucker for President. You can just search that on Amazon. That's probably the easiest way to get the book. You can also click through my website. It's benlacrossebooks.com. I'm on Facebook. There's a Tucker for President Facebook group, Twitter @BenLaCross. You can find me. I'm a local guy. I'm a small town guy. I'd love to engage with anybody.
Hey man, it's a pleasure talking to you, Ben. Thank you so much for being here with us. Michigan author of that Tucker for President book. You want to check that out? We'll put the links up. Make sure you get them. Appreciate you, and thanks for being here, Ben.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Justin.
It's part of the after show. And if you enjoyed this, make sure you click share, like, and comment. We'd love to get you one of those books. We're going to be randomly picking a couple of people there to win those books. And, of course, you can listen to this again. The podcast is up, as always. The iHeartRadio. Maybe you missed something, or maybe you're just checking this out for the first time. The after show. What is it? What is the actual show? It's West Michigan Live, and it's on weekdays from 9 to 10 on Wood Radio, 1300 AM, 106.9 FM. In the Grand Rapids area and West Michigan, but you'll be able to listen to us wherever if you're just checking this out, and we appreciate that. Live on the iHeartRadio app from 9 to 10, and then, of course, in the podcast as well. Any way that you want to get us, that's what we're going to be able to make sure you're able to get us wherever you're at. That's how it works. If you want to get more good news, like I was talking about earlier, it's pretty simple. Get more good news. Just go to justinbarclay.com/good news. justinbarclay.com/good news. I'll put the links up too, so you can go on over and check that out. But I love to send out good news. I think there's plenty more things in the world that we don't get to hear about these days. And I just think that if you're like me, you're kind of like hungry for them. You're looking for them. And you wonder, as you look around sometimes, why don't about this? How come I don't ever hear the good news? How come I don't ever hear the good stories? Because they're happening. Well, now you can. justinbarclay.com/good news. justinbarclay.com/good news. That's it for me. I will see you back here at 9:06 live on Wood Radio. Janice Dean will join us. She is, of course, you probably recognize her from the meteorologist on Fox News. Her parents both died in New York. And I know it's a very sad story from COVID-19, but the good news is she's taking action. She's not going to let their deaths be in vain. And she's asking the governor there in New York to own up to the mistakes that he made, asking the governor all over and governments all over to make sure that they don't make these mistakes. In fact, here in Michigan, our governor continues to take and put sick patients from hospitals with COVID-19 back into nursing homes where they could possibly infect some very vulnerable how her parents died. And we'll talk to her tomorrow morning. Part of the show, and of course, love to hear from you as always. It's a free-for-all Friday. The good stuff coming up tomorrow morning on West Michigan Live. That's it.